Previously, I mentioned how the NWO was inspired by a similar concept that happened in Japan. Now, that video mainly focused on the WCW side of the equation, but what about that original feud? What was it all about, and just how similar was it to the New World Order in World Championship Wrestling? Well, that's the topic of this episode, because today, Dave knows the Union of Wrestling Forces International invasion of New Japan Pro Wrestling. The UWF originally started out as the Universal Wrestling Federation in Japan in 1984 and was formed by defecting members of New Japan's roster. Some of these members included Satoru Sayama, who was the original Tiger Mask, Akira Maeda, Nobuhiko Takahata, Kazuo Yamazaki, and Yoshiaki Fujiwara, who all had martial arts in their background in addition to pro wrestling, and they wanted to use those skills in order to make their new wrestling company more realistic. As a result, UWF's focus would be more of a shoot-based style, implementing more kickboxing strikes and more submission holds, resembling something more akin to MMA. But unfortunately, not everyone could adapt to this style, with other founding members, Rusha Kimura, Ryuma Go, and the Grand Hamada leaving to join All Japan Wrestling instead. Now, aside from that, the promotion still was plagued with plenty more problems. They did begin gaining some traction when they started a working relationship with the WWF, however, that deal stopped as soon as the UWF's president, Shinma Hazashi, became yet another person to leave for All Japan. And things really became heavy when Sayama and Akira started to clash. Sayama wanted UWF to focus on more strikes, while Akira wanted submissions to be the dominant aspect. Not being able to resolve their differences, the two men eventually started hitting each other for real during their matches. This all ended when Akira, not holding back at all, kicked Sayama right in between the legs. Sayama was so upset over the incident that he quit, not only the company, but the business altogether, becoming a martial arts instructor instead and not returning to the world of wrestling for over a decade. Akira would be suspended and ultimately fired as a result, and following this in 1986, a mere 2 years later after they began, UWF closed its doors. But not for the last time. With a good bunch of their original roster, including Akira, having returned to New Japan, history would soon repeat itself. Akira would be suspended by New Japan for shooting on Riki Choshu. Then he would be let go altogether after refusing to travel to Mexico. Following this, Akira, along with fellow UWF founders Takada and Yamazaki, were joined by Yoji Anjo and Tatsuya Nakano for another exodus from New Japan. Together, they revived their old promotion in February of 1988 with the newborn UWF. And shortly after, Akira began negotiations with Antonio Inoki to also bring Fujiwara back into the fold. Fujiwara had become quite the trainer for New Japan and was stuck in the undercard despite being well respected in the locker room. But nevertheless, Fujiwara's true desire was to return to the shoot style of the UWF, which he was allowed to do in 1989 along with a few of his finest students. However, the following year, the UWF would come to a close yet again. This time as a result of Akira, who had stepped down as president, clashing with the new president, Shinji Jin, who wanted to work with other promotions from around the world. Akira, who may have handed down the reins, was still in a position of power, and he did not want the UWF mingling with other forms of pro wrestling. This led to a clash, coupled with the economic downturn that Japan was facing, hurting their profits. The newborn UWF said goodbye yet again on December 1st, 1990. Well, many members went their separate ways. Some of them, including Takada, Yamakaze, Anjo, and Nakano, wanted to keep the UWF's shoot style going. So they rebranded themselves, turning the UWF from Japan's Universal Wrestling Federation to becoming the Union of Wrestling Forces International, which debuted a few months later in May of 1991. And it was this time around that they would inspire the world yet again. Or, should I say, the New World Order. Because following this inception, the UWFi would begin having financial difficulties around 1995. Sensing that the end was near, and in a last-ditch effort, a new deal was proposed with their former competitor, New Japan Pro Wrestling, which led to them joining up with the exact company that they were trying to distance themselves from all those years ago. But instead of merely doing a cross-promotion, they figured, why not really play it up? So a story was created where the UWFi would invade New Japan, and the feud would officially kick off on October 9th in 1995 at the show Clash, NJPW versus UWFi. Now the angle here was that these two companies were competing to see who was better, but even though UWFi was involved with the angle, New Japan was the one controlling the booking. So unsurprisingly, in most of the UWFi versus New Japan matches, New Japan came out victorious. But not all of them, because it was the big match for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, which saw the Great Muta, representing New Japan, lose his title to the UWFi's Nobuhiko Takada. Takada then lost his title in April of 1996, thus ending the feud with New Japan. Now sadly, UWFi came across looking weak, and this feud seemingly did more harm than it did good for the company. They did try to repeat the angle again with another Japanese promotion, Wrestle Association R, but with no real success. And just like how WCW came to a close in the WWE, UWFi's poor booking from their former rival led to the promotion going away for good. Now, as you can see, this storyline is very different to that of the NWO, and if anything, I think it more closely corresponds with the WCW invasion angle of the WWE. And yes, the idea of another company invading is the core concept of both this feud and the New World Order, but aside from that, it bears very little in the way of resemblance. The NWO was popular because they were dominant right from the start. And yes, Takada did win the IWGP title, but while he was a UWF founding member, he was in no way, shape, or form the UWFi's version of Hulk Hogan. And with the majority of the UWFi's talent losing to New Japan, the group was seen as weak rather than a force to be reckoned with. Plus, the killer promos, the t-shirts, and the general sense of cool that the NWO brought to the table was not only what made them popular, but it was also what completely separates them from the UWFi's invasion feud. Not to mention that the UWFi was really focused on being their own company, and was using the angle in a losing effort to try and keep their brand afloat, where the NWO was a splinter cell of WCW, a rogue faction that was trying to take it over. So while the UWF was surprisingly influential for the short amount of time that they were around, and with as much inspiration as they did give, I think it's safe to say that they were nothing like the New World Order. But all the same, I would still venture to say that they were definitely too sweet. But what do you think? How do you feel the UWFi's feud compares with the NWO? Let me know down in the comments. And I also want to remind everyone that July 22nd will start the countdown to my 2-year anniversary here on YouTube on July 28th. And to celebrate all that week, I will be launching a new video every single day, leading up to the debut of a brand new show on my official 2-year anniversary. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, Dave knows.